Okay, good morning. This week, well, not just this week, but next week as well, actually, we are back on official farm business. We're kicking off this morning with a little bit of topping. So we've got about 60 or 70 acres of which we need to get topped and just tidy everywhere up, get rid of the thistles, the docks, and some of the old dead sort of grass that's sort of coming to head at the top. But the topper that we've got on the farm is actually Rob's. It's only 5 foot wide. So what we've done is we have hired this baby in from Mr. Annandale. This has got a 4 or 5 metre wide bed on it, so it means that we can just get on a little bit quicker, because that way, by taking it in a bit of a shift pattern between me, Mark and Rob, because Ryan is sunning himself somewhere abroad, it means that we can just get all the sort of 60, 70 acres hopefully done during the day, and it won't have cost us a great deal of money, and it'll certainly be more cost effective than tootling around with a little 5 foot wide one that we've got. To be honest, this job this morning has suited me down to the ground, because I've had the most horrendous flare-up of gout in my big right toe. Now, for those of you that have not had gout before, it is the most painful thing ever. Far, far more painful than childbirth, I'm told.
You serious?
Apparently, years ago, it used to be classed as a rich man's disease or a king's disease. I can assure you that is not the case. I am just but a poor farmer. So naturally, I have now opted to try and find jobs today where I don't have to walk very far. But if anybody has got any old wives' tales of how to either get rid of a flare-up or prevent it from happening again, please let me know. Because what I've read on Google, it's a build-up of crystals between the joint that then become angry and inflamed, but don't seem to see, other than drinking loads of water and taking drugs.
I'll tell you what, that crack is really moorish.
I don't really see how you're supposed to get rid of it or prevent it from happening. So, old wives' tales, please. Hello? Bloody hell, you're quick. They just literally sent me an email yesterday saying you were coming some point in July. Okay, mate, I'll let you know. So that was BT. They were supposed to be coming at some point in July because they'd lost our application to install the broadband to the new bio unit, and they've turned up 20 days ahead of schedule. Not complaining though. So I'm just going to finish this paddock off now, and then I'm off on to other official Fowler and Gilbert business. But before we go back to the farm, I will just have a little conversation about Shropshire Council, because what I'm going to say is, from a planning perspective, I have had my fair share of battles with Shropshire Council. But something seems to have changed, and I don't know what it is, but they are far more proactive, they are engaging a lot more with us, and ultimately they're looking at everything at its merits and can see what we're trying to achieve, I think, as the bigger picture. And the planning application for the Silage Clamp building, that application was passed in just a matter of days. Then I mentioned, if you remember in the last video, that I was going to have to, unfortunately, ask Justin to do another application to put that maize bay on the end to give us that extra clamp. Well, we submitted that application, and again, that was a 28-day notice. So in other words, the rules of planning means, because that's more of a permitted development building, the council, we inform them of what we want to do, and they give us, well, we give them, should I say, 28 days in which to say, no, it needs to go for a full planning application because it doesn't meet the criteria, or no, we can't have it. So for agricultural development, that's quite an important sort of planning route in which we go down, because the cost as well is relatively small in comparison to a full planning application. And the other thing is, a permitted development or 28-day notice does not carry the requirement for biodiversity net gain like a full planning application does. So we submitted this next application for basically the additional bay and the connecting point between what is the straw shed at the minute and the silage clamp that's going to be, and it hasn't even took the 28 days and they've already passed it in, I don't even think it's been 2 weeks since we submitted it, which is absolutely fantastic, because that means, from a manufacturing of the building point of view, from a putting, well, the foundation's already in, so I've got to get them in, but I can get everything done and built all in one hit, ultimately saving me a lot of time, effort, and having to do things twice. We have now used up our 2-year allowance on the 28-day notice, I think, so I can't really put anything else in now until these buildings have been finished, and then 2 years down the line you get your square footage back again, unless there is a little rule by where if the buildings are 90 metres apart, then you get the additional footage all over again. So, but that's not really going to come in, because the next building at the farm, like I said before, is going to be that sort of large finishing shed that I want at the bottom. Well, that's going to be a full application, because that's for livestock and it's within the meterage of road or other dwellings. But like I say, I don't know what has changed. I'm most certainly not complaining. I am the first person to whinge about the council when we've had all these battles over the last few years. But whatever they've done, whatever policy has changed, I'll be the first person to now commend them and say it's actually a pleasure working with them. Back to the farm. Okay, so back on the farm, and just to sort of show you now what I mean in terms of the planning that we've got. What we've done is, obviously this was that track through, or the ramp through. That there is where the silage clamp building's going, and this is that area that I was just on about here, and an additional bay on the end. So what we've done is we've stoned this here through now anyway. I did put 3 foundations in at the time when we did the clamp, because ultimately we were going to need some form of a fence or set of gates across here for when we're moving cattle from one yard to the other. But I did put the bases in at the time big enough so that they are the right size for a gable foundation for when we come to do this infill. So shed-wise, in fact, probably easier to go back to balls in the office. So like I say, this is the 3 bays of the silage clamp that we've seen before. What we've done then is, in addition to that, we've put an additional bay on the end of the building, and we've continued that all the way through to the point in which it sort of comes across the back of the existing building that we've got with a little muck midden there. So where that sort of whole bay comes through, we've now got one real long bay there that we can put maize in, or if we can fit maize in what we've got, we can then put something else in it. But that bay will come all the way through, and then what I've done additionally to that, to use or make the most of the square footage and to make it a little bit easier from a building perspective, we've then added this little extra section as where the infill starts. So we've got a little bit of a tricky situation to deal with where this little muck midden is, because the muck midden was always built so that we could put a roof over that at some point if we wanted to. But obviously the way in which the cladding and the gutter lines work, it's going to take a little bit of fiddling and messing around. So it makes it easier now by having that first section of that infill coming into play at this stage, that we can then, the rest of the shed is just rinse and repeat once we've done that sort of hard section at the far end. So then, like I say, that section that we've done from a planning perspective will finish at that point, roughly 1 bay in on the end of this existing building here. And then, like I say, in the future we will infill this then right the way up to this end, where we can have a frame and some gable posts in at the time. Now I'm going to wait from a planning perspective for that, because to put it in for full planning, I know it'll go straight through, but there is extra costs and the biodiversity net gain for something that is relatively simple to go through from a planning perspective. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to wait now until we've got enough square footage left, which I think from memory has got nothing to do with this here. It's more to do with the buildings behind you, which was the bio unit and the machinery store. When they have been up for 2 years, I can then effectively put in the square footage that we've got then left to get this infill section done and complete. And that'd be great then, because the plan here will be that we can house either some machinery and bits and bobs that we have now not got in the machinery shed because the machinery shed has got cattle in, or we can have a couple of hospital pens in here for when we're calving if we've got anything with problems, so we're not utilising or taking up too much space in the buildings that we've got. Because like I say, I want to calf up here, I want to then put the cows with calf in the 2 new buildings that we've got going down the bottom. But then if we have anything with any particular problems, we end up losing too much space because we haven't got a way of putting anything in its own little hospital pen without sort of taking up segments of the building. So here would be ideal that we can have some hospital pens that if we've got problems, we've got somewhere to put them. And then before we move away from farming infrastructure and go across to talking more farming stuff, the only thing left really is the bio unit. So we've had that tested again. Unfortunately, the moisture content is still just slightly too high. That was about a week ago, so I'm hoping in about another week's time, we've got the windows, we've got the doors open in the day, closed at night, so in about another week's time I'm hoping that moisture content will have reduced enough that we can get that flooring on. Wayne's been in doing a few bits and bobs, Criddy's been in and finished his bits and bobs and stuff to do with the cameras, but basically before we can proceed any further now we need that flooring in, so fingers crossed in about a week's time that'll be good to go. Okay, so finish this week's vid off on a little bit of farm stuff now. So we've had Richards in, they have come and power harrowed and seeded them areas that we've sort of levelled off and that we've put back to soil, and around the gateways and the ramping from this field into the other field down there. So they've been and done that. So that's all done, tidied up. All the fencing was done obviously the last time you were here. And then really the last of it was we've obviously done our first cut and we've got all the bales up the top end of our yard up there. We bought these in then from Richards's, they've done them for us. We've also had some from a neighbouring farm and Ryan has managed to find us some as well of his own. So we've basically been bringing bales in left, right and centre to make sure that we've got enough. Obviously we're about to start thinking now about second cut for us. I've got no idea at the minute where we're going to put the bales because this yard is now effectively full. We've got bits and bobs stacked here, the top yard is full. I don't really want to put anything down on where we're developing because I can guarantee it will just be in the way of when we're coming to do the concreting works or putting the buildings up. So I'm back to that same old struggling for room on our farm. I mean, we have got this nice section of yard here that we could arguably put a big stack running down the middle of the yard, but what I don't want to do is go and make it tight. Now I've made it tight here for Arctics with pig feed or collecting pigs or delivering pigs in. We're sort of banking on this area being open to turn round. We're obviously starting to think about straw as well, so we don't want to go and fill this yard up and make it that tight that we can't turn anything round in here. So yeah, still struggling a little bit on bales and where we're going to store them. Unfortunately, like I said, we're not going to have clamp done for second cut. I'm still hopeful that we'll get it for third cut, and we absolutely need it for the maize that we've got in the ground. So we're probably just going to end up having to make life a little bit harder than we wanted it to be for now. I don't want to go back into a field though, because like I say, as soon as you put it in the field, we absolutely trash the fields because it's that wet in the winter that you've then got a big area that you've lost to grass at the beginning or at the spring where the grass starts coming through, and then have a mountain of mess that we've then got to tidy up. I mean, I suppose we could do a run of bales up at the 60 acres we've got up the road down the side, which is where they were stored last time, or some of them were, but again, it comes logistically a nightmare when you want them to get in there and get out without trashing the roads with all the shit off the tyres. And last thing on this week's vid really is straw. Little bit worried. I'm hearing such varied opinions on what we're in for this year. Some people are saying it just hasn't grown, it hasn't performed, so we've got stuff in the ground like this that's coming to a head. And therefore there's not going to be a great deal of straw around. And then I've got straw dealers and people in other parts of the country, and even one chap locally actually that's got a hell of a lot of straw that he's saying, don't know why people are panicking, there's an absolute mountain of it on the ground, so therefore it's not going to be in short supply, and therefore the price shouldn't be too ridiculous. So I don't know what you guys think. Drop a comment in the box if what you think it's going to be this year or what we're in for on a straw perspective this year. I'm a little bit worried because, like I say, we need the best part of 500 tonne, and if the price is high, then that's going to sort of make life difficult again for us going out in the back of the year. And also a bit of advice, do we fill up now with 500 tonne, or do we do the 250 that we need to get us through and then start buying it in at the back end or early part of next year as and when we need it, which is a little bit of what we have been doing this year. But that's it for this week. Next week we're going to be all about the animals. We've got to talk bulls because I got some real bullshit shit again. We've been PDing and we've got loads of stuff on the farm on the animal front. But if you like what you're seeing, please hit subscribe, ring the bell, and we'll catch you next week, maybe with a farm montage.